This is the first of a custom Sten build. I had 3 of them done by MK Gun Mods down in Florida. A nice man down there named Mark. He's an older gentleman who just loves tinkering with semi-auto conversions. It's a Sten Mark II. It's built from an original kit on a US receiver tube. The Sten Mark II was the first mass-produced Sten. About 2.6 million were made, mostly during 1941, 42, up to about early 44. It was basically a simplification of the original Sten Mark I, which itself was a pretty simple gun to begin with. Just a direct blowback gun. Not much to it. It's trigger. It was semi-auto or full auto select fire. This one obviously is a carbine. Has the rotating mag well. I had Mark build it with a bronze bolt, which you don't see many bronze bolts, but they were used during 42 and 43 mostly when steel was at a premium and they could get away with using a cast bronze bolt. The original fire mode selector has been turned into a cross pin safety. This gun is striker fired. I did that to preserve the original trigger feel group with the spring and everything. It has what they call a loop stock, which is pretty quick removable. You just press it down and pull it off. There's a cleaning rod stowed inside it. Has an original Sten Mark I sling on it. Of course, it has an extended barrel. The original 8-inch barrel's here, but then of course it has an extension out. It feeds from 32 round magazines, which are really the low point of the Sten. They were copied from the German MP28, and they're a double stack but a single feed design. Cheap to make, but not all that reliable, and caused really problems that never got satisfied solutions with the Sten. It has fixed sights. Mark did install a J-hook here, if I can do it. A little stiff, still new. Kind of like the originals. He had to move the charging handle a little bit down on the tube because of the bronze bolt to have enough meat in the bolt to do all the modifications. He uses an AR-15 style firing pin, which is nice if it ever breaks. The barrel is removable. He gave me a display barrel with this, so it actually looks decent. I'm quite happy with the build. We're still tinkering on it, trying to figure out which kind of ammo it likes, getting it there. He gave me a couple of different strengths of striker spring, so tinkering with which springs like which ammo. But all in all, a nice solid build, very historically accurate, at least within what the law allows, and the first of the mass-produced Sten guns. Alright, next we have the second of the MK gun mods, Stens. This is a Mark III. It wasn't actually built for me, but I ended up with it for a time. Pretty much your standard Mark III. Has the T buttstock, fixed magazine housing. It has the sight rail on top. Has the extended barrel shroud. On a normal Mark III with the 8-inch barrel, it would end just about here. But, I mean, federal law, what can you do? It has the same cross pin safety. It does not have the J-hook, again, because this wasn't built specifically for me. But actually, this is the gun that allowed me to meet Mark down at MK Gun Mods, so yeah, all's well. The Mark III came after the Mark II, obviously. It was an even simpler version, meant mostly for infantry. Without the rotating magwell, with the extended shroud, it was a little bit longer, heavier. And in a lot of ways, it was based more on the Mark I than the Mark II. It was primarily developed and manufactured by Lyons Brothers in England in 42, 43. The goal of the Mark III was to make as many parts from stampings as absolutely possible. The rear sight's now stamped. This tube is a milled tube, but the originals were actually a folded sheet of steel into a tube, but this is a seam. This is just a reproduction to make it look like an original. But yeah, even the receiver tube was stamped in the Mark III. Again, the T-stock, the most simple, but also a little more durable than the loop stock. It was used on both Mark IIs and Mark IIIs. Uses the same firing mechanism. This one has a standard steel bolt in it. Same striker fire design. Uses the same 32 round stick magazines. I've got a hybrid Sten Sterling sling on it. The sling loop is original down here. I was thinking about putting an M1 carbine sling on it. I thought that might fit a little better, but this is at least a British sling. We just put about 30-35 rounds through it. It ran great, no problems whatsoever. So yeah, this was the mid-war Sten, the most simple, basic one. Took about 5.5 man-hours to make. Consisted of under 50 parts total. Just basic, reliable, except for the magazine. Very basic sights, but effective when they needed guns. They had guns. They made just under 900,000 of the Mark III alone. They also had a suppressed version as the Mark IIIS, which had an integral silencer. These were used quite a bit in combat. They were mostly in semi-auto. Yeah, so quite happy with this one. It ran good. Ready?
You're good.
And finally, for the Stens, we have a Mark V. The Mark V was made in 1944 and 1945. It's basically the final version. They said improved, but really it's all the improvements are cosmetic. But you know, I guess something's better than nothing. It is essentially a Mark II with obviously a wooden shoulder stock made out of some old man's shiffer robe. Brass butt plate with a small trap door for a cleaning kit. Actually a cleaning rope. It's actually smaller than an infield. I think the infield rope will fit in it. Has a wooden pistol grip. It's at a very unusual angle. It's usable, but it has to be swept kind of forward to let the stock slide off. Uses the same bolt system, made of steel. MK Gun Mods put the notch in the receiver like an original, the way I like it. Useful for checking chambers, letting it cool, safety, because we've had issues in the past with other Stens, Catco. So I'm very careful. This has the cross pin safety. This one's still new and quite stiff, but usable. And for some reason, they put an infield number 4 style sight. This sight is drift adjustable for windage, so it gives a little bit more flexible a sight picture than the older ones. Now the original guns also had a number 4 bayonet lug mount on the end of the barrel. This one did too, its original barrel, but of course when we installed the extended shroud here, we had to mill that off, unfortunately. But how it goes. Still, at least we were able to keep the unique looking number 4 sight. Just over 500,000 of these were made, so not that many, but enough. They were used at Arnhem, Operation Market Garden. There are pictures with guys without the buttstocks clicked on, so maybe they dropped in with them off and then snapped them on later. But they stayed in service and through the 50s and 60s along with the Mark IIs and the Mark IIIs. Again, it's just essentially a fancified Mark II. Alright, next up in our line of British weapons is a Sterling, made in Dagenham, England, Mark VI carbine. It's very much like the Wiselights, the Centuries that have been out, although they're discontinued now as far as I know. Maybe they're out of parts kits. Same basic layout. Of course, it's a closed bolt only. These were imported into the USA from the mid to late 70s until 1988 or so, when Sterling, the company, went out of business, when Britain was more or less downsizing all of its firearms industry. I haven't been able to get an exact number. It seems like about 6,000 semi-auto Sterlings were made all told. How many actually made it over into the USA? I don't know. This one has a pretty low serial in the 200s. It does have the Bayonet Lug, which is completely useless. It's basically the appendix, but it looks neat, gives it that military style. It does not have the turret mounts for the rail, which frankly is fine by me, because what am I going to use a rail for? It has nice adjustable sights for what it is. I did put an E&L solid barrel shroud on it. I like these. You've seen one on my 1894P. I just think they cover your barrel up, keep the finish on it good, give you a little something extra out here. They're lightweight, really no detractions. Anyway, the Sterling was developed as the Patchett machine gun during World War II. It was basically going to be an improved Sten. Development began in 43, 44, and there were some issued for, trials and whatnot. There's talk that some of them were used at Arnhem at Market Garden, but actually there's no evidence of that. Maybe a few were there, maybe they weren't. It's debated back and forth. It actually took until 1953, though, for the gun to be officially adopted as the L2A1 in British service, because after World War II, Britain didn't have a pressing need for a new SMG. They had tons of Stens in inventory, and they just didn't have enough money to really, adopt something totally new then. But they adopted this. It has a folding stock, which is a little complicated, so I'm not going to completely fold it now, but it's a good solid stock. It gives a very nice shoulder. It's just a little complicated to fold and unfold. It's really more for storage than anything else. It has spiral cuts on the bolt, which act basically to push debris out. So it's quite reliable. I didn't know that about this. You can't pull it back with the safety on. I don't think you can. I think you can on the Wiselight. Anyway, show you there how it moves. The best thing though about the Sterling is the 34 round curved magazine. It has these two rollers as a follower in here, which make loading and unloading a breeze. But also, this is one of the most reliable 9mm SMG mags made. It's just phenomenally well made. Overbuilt, tough, all steel. One of the major defects of the Sten was its magazine. So when they went to the new gun, they really went all out making a great mag for it. So between the mag, the nice bolt, the overall just good fit and finish of these, they were one of the most reliable, dependable SMGs of the Cold War era. This is a Mark VI carbine, which is a semi-auto version of the Sterling Mark IV, which itself is officially known in British service as the L2A3, which was adopted in 1956 as a slightly product-improved version of the original. The L2A3 remained in active service up through the Gulf War and was eventually being phased out until about 2000. They're nice guns, neat guns, very much, an 80s Cold War appearance. Internally, it's very much the same as a Wiselight, so no real surprises there. Most people have at least seen one of the Wiselights by now. Wiselight just basically copied the Mark VI. Well, that's it for our British SMGs. So, yeah, thank you. This is a bonus. We just did a Sterling Mark VI carbine. So how about another Sterling? This is an AR-180, of course. Some of you know it. made by Sterling. Serial numbers in the 18,000 range, so it's in the first 3,000 or 4,000 they made. So they were still using painted finishes. I don't know if this is actually Sunkerite or like Sunkerite, but I like it. It seems like more of a military finish. Of course, it has, like all AR-180s, has the side folding buttstock. Has the quick detach rail on top. Flip. Adjustable rear sights. An okay place magazine release. I can reach it and I have relatively small hands. Ambidextrous safety. Gas piston system up here. Easily accessed, just crack it open and it comes right out. Couldn't be easier. Dual guide rod bolt. Made of all stamped steel, or at least mostly stamped steel. The bolt carrier is milled, but the lower receiver. 18.5-inch barrel with a duckbill style flash hider like the early AR-15s. Solid bottom there. AR-15 style bayonet lug. Takes the same bayonet. A relatively similar front sight to an AR-15, protected. There's your gas block. A very ergonomic pistol grip. It's probably my favorite factory grip compared to the AR, the AK, the FAL, G3, all of those. Dust cover right here. Kicks open when you charge it. This is an original Sterling 40-round steel magazine. One of the better magazines that hold 40, 223. Gun is actually marked 5.56. This is an original Sterling black sling. It's like the U.S. military silent sling, but it has these metal ends, which I think is a nice improvement. Rubber recoil pad on the buttstock. And a charging handle that you can reach with not too much effort from the left side. So while I wouldn't say it's totally ambidextrous, the magazine release comes to mind, it made some step towards it. This gun would not at all be out of home in the 90s with all of its features. And it's crazy because it was developed in the 60s. It's one of the last Armorlight designs. It was competing against the AR-15, and you could see where they learned a lot of lessons from it. Long story short, 4,000 or so were made in California. Then production switched to Howa in Japan. They made about 3,000. Then finally, around 1975, production switched to Sterling in Dagenham, England, which continued to make these until 83, 84. Sterling made about 12,000. All in all, approximately 20,000 AR-18s, the full auto version, and AR-180s, the semi-auto version, were manufactured, so a very small number all in all. This gun has a lot of great ideas. It was designed to compete against the AK-47, or I should say, excuse me, the AKM, by being all stamped. It was designed mostly with the Third World in mind, but the U.S. military did try it out in '64 and in '69. It needed development. If you look at the early AR-15s, with all the design improvements that they required to go to the M16, M16A1, and then of course past there, if this gun had received even 1/10 of the development opportunities that the AR did, it could have been an outstanding gun. As it is, it's still a very solid gun, even in almost a prototype stage. Very reliable, quite accurate. At the same time, it is flimsy for a military gun. This folding stock is workable, but it just has this one pin here, springs here. These can wear out, quite thin polymer. You know, it should have been beefed up. The magazine bolt hold open is flimsy and easily broken. There's some problems with the extractor. Some of them crack. Thankfully, AR-15 extractors can easily be fitted, so that's at least one spare part that's easy to find. There's also issues with the trigger pins walking out, but again, they're anti-walk pins, so not a real big issue. But again, just small things that could have easily been troubleshot and probably fixed in less than 6 months of R&D. I've always liked these. I mostly stick to military issue guns. This gun wanted to be military issue so much. You can just tell by the look. It's lightweight, compact, especially when the stock's folded. Reliable as all get out because of the gas piston system. Interestingly, the AR-15s of today have all the problem with the carrier tilt and all that. The AR-18, AR-180 doesn't have that problem, never did. It uses a dual guide rod in the housing there, so it automatically just avoids that whole thing altogether. Of course, then again, this was designed from the ground up as a piston gun. Anyway, just one of my long-term favorites. I just traded for this one. I'm very happy with it. Got a couple of Sterling 40-round mags with it. And we just got through shooting it. I just put 10, 12 rounds through it. It ran fine. I didn't expect otherwise. It's one of the better Sterlings. But I thought since we're doing a British thing today, I would just bring it out. This was the inspiration behind the L85 or SA80 bullpup, also the G36, and really a myriad of other guns. There's some interesting stories about how the SA80 over in England from Enfield took inspiration from these, even going so far in some of the prototypes as to use actual Sterling-made bolt carrier groups, again in some prototypes. Anyway, just thought I'd share it around. You don't see a whole lot of AR-180 videos on YouTube. So again, thanks for watching. Maybe it's late, maybe you're bored, but yeah, just a British day. Well, we've avoided the rain luckily, so try to get indoors now.